reforms. Policy measures including removal of finance sustainable fuel subsidy had to be taken. This, it must be admitted, has resulted in unexpected adjustments all facets of the economy and our daily lives. But that was the only option that any government could take. And I recall what Professor Rama told me, the president of Afreximbank, on his visit to Nigeria. That was the best decision to take in that industry, petroleum industry. And he said the fuel subsidy regime got to a point where export of crude could not pay for importation of petroleum products. He said it was very bad business. It's one of the most respected development economists in the world. President of Afreximbank in Nigeria. I said it was at that point that Nigeria approached Afreximbank for support in order to enable us to import and pay for petroleum products. Bad business. The administration similarly inherited a security situation that existed for 2 decades and required greater attention in terms of upgrade of security architecture, infrastructure, systems, capability of personnel. This has compared massive infusion of scarce resources from our already dwindling revenues. The objectives have been to secure lives and property, build foreign investor confidence, and increase food production by returning our communities, many of them, to their homes and farmlands in safe and secure environment. There are 5 local governments from Benue State that have been similarly affected. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saw the mandate of Nigerians to lead the nation at this difficult time because he knew that effective leadership was required to address the challenges that had accumulated over several years. That was why he sought to renew the hope of Nigerians. Within a space of 14 months of purposeful and meaningful leadership, the administration has recorded tremendous accomplishments that laid the foundation for immediate, medium, and long-term prosperity of Nigerians in an inclusive manner. I have decided not to go into details. I want you to take note of what has happened in the labor sector and the masses. It wasn't protest that led to conclusion on the issue of minimum wage from 30,000 to 70,000 naira, an increase of over 100%. This I want to emphasize because constructive engagement is more important, it's preferable, and more result-oriented than when we seek to go on protest marches. I recall as a student in the 70s, I think 1970, 79, somewhere, when we said Ali must go, we protested and the whole protest went out of control. Tragedies were recorded on many campuses. We said Ali must go, Ali didn't go anywhere. He remained the Minister of Education. He appeared before the judicial inquiry. Ali was later to become senator and even vetted some candidates for appointments into the federal cabinet. It's just like NSAS protests. They yielded anything but negativity. So you see, it's not everything that must protest who must do this. I'm explaining this to you because you're very knowledgeable people. You do your research. If I'm off the mark, you can know. Even if you were not born at the time we said Ali must go. I'm 70 years, so I know that in this hall, I think I'm the oldest man. And this other one sitting here are younger than me. But you can learn from the old man's experience too. I have left most of these things for my counterparts to handle. That's why I just touched briefly on the issue of labor, on the issue of infrastructure development and industries. The ministers will be talking more on this, social safety net. The programs are very vibrant and are yielding results. Of course, local government autonomy, creation of Ministry of Livestock Development, and the new baby, the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. It's, the president signed this legislation, this being into law about 2 weeks ago. So ladies and gentlemen, it is in the light of this aforementioned situation and accomplishments that we wish to inform you that Nigeria is working. Nigeria is work in progress, and in due course, we shall breathe a sigh of relief. Bongo Sikwa, a musician from my state, once said what? Nothing good comes easy. And our sacrifices of today are for a better tomorrow. The ongoing economic hardships, and they are improving anyway, will abate very soon, and we shall all enjoy endless prosperity. We therefore appeal to Nigerians of whatever persuasion, belief, demography, gender, and status to shun cause for protests against hunger by prioritizing peace and progress. For avoidance of doubts, the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR recognizes the right to peaceful protest, but circumspection and vigilance should be our watchwords. Government is wary of the dangers associated with protests that are vulnerable to being hijacked by bandits, insurgents, and other criminals, as it happened during Operation NSAS. Rather, we request that dialogue should be advanced, and we remain open to such. Our peace and Nigerians should please pursue the path of peace, dialogue, and collaboration in addressing the challenges that collectively confront us. Please go about your legitimate businesses and avoid actions and or associations that are capable of disturbing the peace of the country. Remain vigilant as well. Let me reassure you that together we shall create a Nigeria where peace and stability are not merely aspirations, but realities, where economic growth is not just a goal, but a tangible outcome, and where the dreams of our people are transformed into a shared national destiny. That's the hallmark of the Hope agenda of the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Thank you for listening.
Please, a round of applause for the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Thank you. To buttress more on the message of the SGF, please permit me to invite to the microphone the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation for his intervention. Please, a round of applause for Mohammed Idris, Fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations.
Thank you very much. Mine is just to add some detail to what the distinguished Secretary to Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, has said. And in doing that, we would like to highlight in some detail some of those key policies and decisions taken by this administration to put Nigeria back on the track to sustained prosperity that all of us so desire. Of course, the SGF has mentioned so many areas, but I want to add what is not so much news, again, but we need to state it out, is that the national minimum wage has now come into effect. Only a few days ago, as all of you know, the president has signed 70,000 naira minimum wage into law. Now, what is worthy of mention here, as you know, is that the position was 68,000. In his wisdom, the president engaged further with key stakeholders and arrived at 70,000 naira, which was sent to the National Assembly and which has now been signed into law. The next thing is the local government autonomy. Now, all of us know that most Nigerians are residing in these local areas at the local government level. And we know what the local government arrangements have become in the last 2 decades. And so the president, in his wisdom, also approached through the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation the Supreme Court for an interpretation of the local government autonomy as enshrined in our Constitution. And it is no longer news that the local government now have full autonomy. Now, what this means is that it is also bringing governance closer to the people at the grassroots. And this is a very important move by the president to ensure that almost everyone, especially the ordinary Nigerians, have government very, very close to them. There is also the intervention in the agri sector. Recall that when the hardship of the food prices was being noticed by government, there was an initial move of pushing 42,000 metric tons of assorted grains to all the states of the Federation. This has been completed as promised by Mr. President. 42,000 metric tons of assorted grains were delivered from our strategic grains reserve to all the states across Nigeria. And the message of the president is that the poor and the most vulnerable members of the Nigerian society are the targets of this palliative. This, of course, is in addition to the 500,000 metric tons of wheat, maize ordered that are all existing mechanized support and incentive to farmers to be sustained and direct the immediate engagement of youth, etc., etc. And only recently, each of the states of the Federation, as has already been widely reported by the media, received at least 20 trucks of rice for onward distribution to the most vulnerable members of Nigerian society. In addition to that, government is also providing rice at 40,000 naira, which is about 50% or more of the cost of the product, so that Nigerians can buy them. Now, this is going to be distributed around the country at designated centers, and it's going to be so well supervised that there won't be opportunity for people to just buy off this rice and deny the vulnerable people who are actually the targets of this to be denied. Now, very important, there is also the social security intervention to states. And I'm sure you will hear that from the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economy Planning. He even put out an advertorial very recently. In the last 8 months alone, over 573 billion naira has been disbursed to all the states of the Federation for the expansion of livelihood support in the form of grants, food palliative, and other social protection program under what is called the NGKS, the Nigerian Community Action for Resilience and Economic Stimulus. There is also the post-subsidy removal presidential grants and loan scheme, which is already been implemented by the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment and the Bank of Industry. For example, there is the disbursement of 50,000 naira grants under the 50 billion naira grants component of the Presidential Conditional Grant and Loan Scheme. So far, over 600,000 Nigerians have already received 50,000 naira grants across the entire 774 local governments in the country. The disbursement of the 150 million MSME and manufacturing loans will also commence after the completion of the ongoing final stage of verification. So the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund, NYIF. The Federal Executive Council in March of 2024 approved the takeoff of the restructured Nigerian Youth Investment Fund with an initial seed capital of 110 billion. 110. This is particularly focusing on the youth to enable them get some employment opportunities, curb youth restiveness, encourage out of school young people, and those who are marginalized, those who are unemployed, or those who are underemployed will also be the target of that. The initiative, of course, is targeted at young people between the ages of 18 and 40. I will repeat, 110 billion naira is already in the kitty for them. This, of course, is in addition to the 3 million technical talent job that is also being pushed forward by the president. Already, now the target is that at least 3 million of our youth will be gainfully employed, focusing on technical, or what we call the vocational technical talent program of this administration. And this initiative is supposed to go on for the next 2 years. Already, about 300,000 of applicants have already benefited from this. And there is also something which is key. And this is another creation of Mr. President. The Unemployed Graduate Support Scheme. Unemployed Graduate Support Scheme. Now, what this seeks to do is to ensure that all these our restive youth who are littered across all homes in this country, that are yet to find jobs. Once you have either a degree or HND or the equivalent of that, and you have your NYSC certificate, you are going to be supported by some allowance continuously until such a time when you find gainful employment. I think this is a novel thing. This is a very important initiative taken by this administration, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to ensure that those who were asked to go to school and actually did go to school but are yet to find jobs will have something in their pocket so that they won't be distressed until such a time when they are gainfully employed before that one ceases. That is also what is called the SUPA, the Skill Up Artisans Initiative. The federal government, through the Industrial Training Fund, has also commenced the retraining of 100,000 artisans under the Skill Up Artisans Initiative. It is a bid to boost the blue-collar sector, promote industrial development, and standardize artisanal training. The program aims to retrain 20 million artisans over the next 5 years. In a bid to drive and incentivize technological innovation, the federal government, through the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, has released the sum of $220 million to 3 Nigerian tech companies. This is all part of also the attempt to train artisans, especially the young people who are in that sector. Now, there is this big one, and that is the CNG initiative. As a result of the withdrawal of fuel subsidy, Nigeria is making an efficient transition to cheaper energy through the CNG initiative. Recall that at the very beginning, thank you for that, it's really blocking my view. Thank you. It would do me a lot of good if they actually come down. The CNG initiative, in the first instance, recall the 1st October speech of Mr. President, 1st October 2023, where he made an initial pledge and provision of 100 billion naira in the first instance for this CNG initiative. The world over, there is this transition from fossil fuel to cleaner energy that is moving and sweeping across the world. And Nigeria cannot be an exception. Now, it is not just safer, it is also cheaper by, according to experts, more than 50%. In some instances, more than 60%. This will ensure that the cost that especially workers and traders move goods from one part to another is brought down. If you were buying, for example, petrol of 20,000 naira to fill your tank, under this initiative, and if you embrace this CNG, you'll be spending about 6,000 naira roughly to achieve that. So you are not just saving money, you are also helping the environment to remain clean. Now, because of this, the first batch of the buses that will be used for the mass transit sector have already arrived. We already have them in Nigeria. But beyond that, for those who have their private vehicles, about 30,000 conversion kits are being provided free of charge to enable people who want to have this seamless transition. 30,000 kits free of charge to be given to them. And this is just the first step. It is going to be a continuous exercise. Now, conversion centers have also been set up around this country. And what is news to all of us is that a survey conducted has indicated that more than $50 million worth of investment has gone into that sector by Nigerians. $50 million so far, and it is still growing. Now, these are private funds that people are putting there so that they could, in turn, take benefit and then help government and help Nigeria to move away from the fossil fuel to these renewables. Now, these mass transit buses that have been procured by the federal government will be distributed, of course, around the 36 states of the Federation. This will greatly improve not just people's finances, their efficiency, and also help to sustain a cleaner and healthier environment. Now, in the health sector, the president has addressed the high cost of drugs and is encouraging local production through a series of policies. For example, an executive order introducing zero tariff and duties on imports of raw materials, active pharmaceutical ingredients, and manufacturing equipment has come into play by this administration. This will greatly help in bringing down the cost of drugs and other health-related matters. The federal government has also conducted 2 rounds of disbursement for primary healthcare revitalization through Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. The training of our frontline health workers is ongoing as we speak. And we are committed, the federal government is committed to retraining about 120,000 of these health workers over the next 3 years. Over 2,400 health workers, including doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, have already been recruited. Many of them are women in the rural areas, helping to ensure that our people are not just healthy, but are also contributing meaningfully to the overall economic development of our nation. Now, the federal government is also supporting 8,300 primary healthcare centers. 8,300 primary healthcare centers with a plan to expand it to at least 17,000 in the next 3 years, with available funds of up to 260 billion. Now, all these figures we are reading out are already being provided by the federal government. These are not funds that the federal government intends to go on, so they are already being provided. Over 200 infrastructure projects have also been successfully executed across our federal hospitals, and 179 pieces of critical medical equipment, etc., etc. This is in addition. Only 2 days ago, the Federal Executive Council also gave approval to the Ministry of Health to ensure that critical supplies needed, especially for dialysis in about 6 or 7 health centers around the country, is also being provided. Then there are 10 legacy healthcare infrastructure projects, including oncology centers that have already been approved and are ongoing across 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. In expanding health insurance coverage, over 1.8 million Nigerians are now covered. Now, these figures are indicating to you the kind of progress we are making from where the administration came into being only a year and a few months ago. This is the direction that Mr. President, through his vision, is taking the country to. And no sector is being left out of these various interventions. Now, again, infrastructure. The Secretary to Government has already discussed the issue of infrastructure around the country. Of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway passing through 9 states, while the 1,000-kilometer Sokoto-Badagry Superhighway passing through 7 states, and the 477-kilometer Calabar-Abuja Superhighway. Now, let me mention that the Sokoto-Badagry, which is about 1,000 kilometers, will have about 63 dams in the corridor. 63 dams. Now, what does this do? This will greatly help to improve agricultural production along that corridor. But not only that, will also help to also provide clean electricity for the consumption of our people, and therefore reducing the over-reliance on the national grid. Of course, you also have the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri Railway and all that. These are some of the many interventions that the federal government, under the able leadership of the visionary leader, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is putting in place to help in ensuring that Nigeria becomes more prosperous, Nigeria becomes more united. This, of course, you know, in addition to the effort that's been made in the security and defense sector, only about a year and a half ago, it's almost unimaginable that you can just take your car and drive between Abuja and Kaduna, a stretch of just over 200 kilometers. Today, people are able to do that. Now, what this means is that there has been a significant progression in the degrading of these issues of banditry and criminality, especially around our roads. This by no means has answered the question of insecurity completely. There are still pockets here and there. Nigerians still have some of these issues of insecurity, but government is working in conjunction with the security agencies to ensure that these is being brought to a halt permanently. You heard also from the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economy Planning some of those gains that we have achieved in just the last press conference. The Minister of Finance told us that there's already over 37 billion naira in our reserve. This is its highest since January of 2023. I'm sure that the Honorable Minister will also make further remark on that. Now, this, of course, so many others. There is an intervention. Now, very important. Only recently, the Federal Executive Council also approved the sale of crude oil to local refineries in Nigeria. Now, this is halting the roundabout approach to the sale and purchase of both crude oil and PMS that we have in this country. And what this entails is that refineries like Dangote and others are able to buy crude from Nigeria using Nigerian currency. This will not just help to conserve our foreign exchange, but will also ensure that it becomes more efficient for the operators to do their business and declare more profit, and in turn also help to the economic development of our country. The SGF mentioned the issue of the livestock, Ministry of Livestock. I mean, the potential as a vision by Mr. President in the livestock development cannot be overemphasized. Look at the countries like Brazil, for example, what they are doing with their livestock sector. It is exactly what the president is going to do for Nigeria. And beyond that, it is also going to significantly address the issue of farmers, cattle, herders conflict in this country. You are also seeing that because solid minerals is so critical to our national and economic development, look at the attention that is also being put there. Recently, the Honorable Minister has been cleaning up that sector so that the desired revenue can come to Nigeria and we rid the sector of illegal operators and quacks. I'm sure he's also going to expand on this. Now, it is impossible to discuss all this within a space of 1 hour or so. So what we are trying to do is to highlight some of these key activities that the government has embarked upon the last 1 year and some months to let Nigerians know the kind of progression that we are also making. So Mr. President, in his wisdom, has actually been protesting on behalf of Nigerians by ensuring that these key reforms that we need to put the country back on the path of sustained prosperity is being achieved. And we call on you, especially the young people, the youth, we call on all of you to please listen to the voice of reason and allow more time for Mr. President's policies to now bear full fruition. There is so much happening, like we always say. It is imperative that you give more time, join hands with government of the day to ensure that Nigeria returns to the path of prosperity. Thank you very much. I want to pause here.
All right, thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for the Honorable Minister of Information. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ministers will take turn. All right, thank you, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'll call on the Coordinating Minister of the Economy and the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, to shed more light on this administration.
Thank you and good afternoon. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation and my other colleagues on the Federal Executive Council, Minister for Budget and Economic Planning, Minister for Information, National Orientation, Minister for Solid Minerals and the Special Advisor to Mr. President on Media. Once again, good afternoon. The SGF had said, Mr. President is not against protest. Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Democrat to the core. He believes in federalism. He believes in freedom of speech and human rights. His concern, and that of many people in this country and even beyond, is that the protest would remain peaceful and orderly, such that the gains that have been made over the last 12 to 15 months should not be dissipated, that the momentum that has been achieved in turning around the Nigerian economy should not be dislodged, disturbed, or dislocated. I think amongst many other well-meaning Nigerians, the President truly understands the concerns that are being expressed, particularly the high and elevated cost of living, which is not peculiar to Nigeria at this stage. With wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and even Sudan, there's disruption around the world, and there has not even been a full recovery from COVID. So inflation is high around the world. Costs are high around the world. And with our import dependency for raw materials and so forth, we too are feeling the effects. However, inflation is falling around the world and in Nigeria. Over the last 15 months or so, the economy has been turned around, and I would even say saved from the precipice. I will not repeat all the specifics of the initiatives that were reeled out by the Minister for Information, but I will envelope them by saying that, on the one hand, we have come from a situation where the nation was living on debt. Every time there was a bill to be paid, it was not paid from revenue, was not paid from investment funding, but it had to be paid from debt, particularly from the central bank, and of course, that was not sustainable. That is no longer the case. The revenue of Nigeria, as a result of diligent application of technology and new processes to federal government expenditure, revenue, including that of the revenue earning ministries, departments and agencies, as well as federal government-owned enterprises, has doubled. Compared to the first half of 2023, the 2024 revenue of the federal government has doubled and is expected to maintain that trajectory. And on the cost side, there has been rejigging, there has been reconfiguration of the procedures and the processes such that costs are now under control, spending more visible and accountable, and the money of Nigerians is being well spent. So that was the basis on which, as a result of implementing measures that were necessary, reform measures that were needed to save the economy, yes, they had led initially to a spike in cost, because it's like medicine. You take the medicine and then the effect comes. So the cost is the medicine and it comes first. However, already we are seeing that the benefits are coming. The economy in the first half of this year has grown. Agriculture, which was negative. So when you say, why are food prices high? Why is there a lack of food? Because agriculture was contracting. In the first half of this year, in the first quarter of this year, it has started growing back again, and we expect that, and we're doing everything to maintain that. Industry is growing, led by ICT, technology, led by solid minerals. It is growing and creating employment. And likewise, of course, services, given our relatively high skill level. Services are also growing. So that is the turnaround that and the momentum that we do not want to see slow down in any way. But on the other hand, Mr. President, even while campaigning, had committed to ensuring that the costs of reform were not to be borne by the poorest and the most vulnerable in the society. It had to be those who are more wealthy, who had more reserves, that would have to share the biggest part of that burden. And so, as was said earlier by the Minister for Information and National Orientation, a series of measures in agriculture, for small-scale industry, even for larger industries, there's financing at 9% is being made available. For transportation costs, CNG, which is 30% of the cost of PMS for fueling vehicles, is being made available. And it's important to point out that in implementing reforms, there are times when what is planned and the timetable that is planned sometimes slips. But the answer is not to now throw out the effort. The answer is not to stop. The answer is to keep going and keep trying. That was the case with the direct benefits, the direct payments for 15 million households, covering 75 million people. At first, it didn't quite go according to plan. So there was a pause. And now, under a much better and technologically strong configuration, payments to individuals have started going out again. In the last, and since it was restarted, 1 million households covering 5 million people have received the benefits. And in the last week alone, 300,000 payments went out. So under the new system, we can expect a scaling up, a speeding up of the payments that Mr. President committed to giving to the poorest and the most vulnerable, to helping them. Likewise, the CNG effort is going to gain momentum. Buses and kits are expected to arrive this coming month, and for the rollout to be speeded up. So we have stayed the course in terms of the effort to make sure that what is promised is delivered, and the benefits are now going to continue to be rolled and are implementing a comprehensive plan that covers agriculture, covers young people, it covers transportation costs in the urban sector, it covers grants to smaller enterprises, 50,000 naira for micro enterprises, and it covers, as I said earlier, funding at an affordable interest rate. Inflation is slowing, but interest rates are still high as central bank battles inflation and carries out its monetary policy in line with its mandate. So against that backdrop, it's important to find cheaper funding so manufacturing can go on, so people can borrow to do their businesses. And in addition, there is approved and coming in the housing sector financing for people to afford mortgages so that they can pay for their property over a long period, over decades, as opposed to being asked to pay in a matter of months. We have heard about the other key elements of what is being done to get the economy growing and to get jobs going again. Because it's when you make investments that you increase productivity, that you grow the economy, you create jobs, and there reduce poverty. And a key element there also is that our major resource, what we have to rely on most, is the God-given resource of oil at a time when crude oil prices are high. And we have the commitment of those in charge of the oil industry that there will be a substantial, a 25% increase in oil production to 2 million barrels a day. And the benefit of that is immediate. It allows funding across the board, social services, infrastructure, business support, agriculture. And the commitment of Mr. President is in the immediate term to bring down food prices. And that's why there are initiatives in addition to supporting farmers to produce. And just 3 days ago, in conjunction with the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, I led an initiative to reorder some funding that was available to Nigeria from one of the multilateral development banks. We quickly rejigged it, reoriented it, and directed it at fertilizer that was available, to purchase that fertilizer and have it distributed particularly to small farmers to catch the last elements of this growing season, this planting season, as well as to prepare very, very well for the dry season farming in the nearest future. So these are elements of a concerted plan by Mr. President to build a better, stronger, more prosperous Nigeria. And what he is saying in the meantime is that we need to give ourselves this golden opportunity to take Nigeria forward. We need to be patient with each other. We need to listen to each other as he is listening to Nigerians in his effort to lead us into a better future. Thank you.
If detail was a person, that person will be the Honorable Minister of Finance. Please, a round of applause for him. Thank you very much. Quickly, for the sake of time, we'll just take the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Atiku Bagudu, CON, after which we'll take the Honorable Minister of Solid Mineral Development. Thank you.
Thank you, the SGF Honorable Ministers, distinguished participants on this press conference, and members of the media. Good afternoon. Let me join the SGF and previous speakers, but from the perspective of planning and budget. What do we do, particularly as it relates to our governance? We, the Ministry of Planning, is responsible for the national consensus, which is documented typically in our national long-term perspective plans, development plans, and our renewed hope agenda. This government, led by President Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, we have a strategy. We campaigned on it. That strategy is the renewed hope agenda. The summary of it is that it is designed to confront our reality. is a strategy to restore an economy that works for all while supporting those who are vulnerable. It is based on appreciation of the fact that we are not where we want to be. And maybe there's no debate about that. Just yesterday, Bismarck Rewani presented a 50-year data from 1960 to 60-year data to show that since our independence, our rate of growth has been lower than our aspirations. And this could be for a lot of reasons, and we are not going to go into them. But President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu believes that sentiment will not solve this problem, blame game will not solve this problem, but as other countries have done, innovation and imagination and proper appreciation that decades of underinvestment brought us to where we are can catalyze us and galvanize us and enable us to form a consensus that can help us solve the problem. That was why when he was swearing us as ministers, he warned that we should imagine that we are drawing water from a dry well, so that when we go to our ministries, we should be imaginative and find solutions for Nigerians. Those solutions involve choices that are both pleasant and tough, but needed to be taken. And responsible leadership sometimes necessitates a leader to take tough choices. As most of you will imagine, there's nothing that a politician loves than to be clapped for or applauded. But a responsible leader, while desiring that, will say, well, we have to take the tough choices for the future. And President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has led us in that. So that is why in delivering on those renewed hope agenda priorities, including the restoration of macroeconomic reform, we are instructed that we should ensure a plan-based governance and budgeting to equitably include all within our constitutional federalism. It's not only concerned for the federal government, but he's equally concerned for the subnationals generating more revenue on a sustainable basis. We re-engineered governance consistent with our federalism, created MDAs that we believe will bring attention to those sectors and we can make haste quickly, among them being steel, creative economy, blue and maritime economy, the livestock sector, as well as instructing us as part of the budget process to ensure equitable spread of projects to support the strategy which can quickly restore macroeconomic growth and development. It is in so doing that he also supported the restoration of autonomy to local government. Noteworthy is his decision recently to sign into law 2 development commissions, North to West, South, is consistent with the demand of those constituencies and our belief that any move to draw attention in what can be done better to foster development is welcome. Not surprisingly, our budget reflects our priorities and innovation. We have increased funding for security, as you have heard from the previous speakers, and I'm not going to go into the detail. We have increased funding for infrastructure, for human capital development, education, health, social transfers to support the vulnerable, as well as innovation and industrialization. We have brought initiatives that we believe are transformative, that can help us generate higher level of growth based on choices that we have seen other countries made. A country where you have to buy a house with 100% financing is not doing what others have done in the world. A country where you have to buy a fridge or a car 100% with funding 100% is not consistent with what we have seen elsewhere. Not surprisingly, a consumer credit fund was introduced to support both the manufacturing sector and to support society in enabling them to acquire goods and services on the long. Equally, a National Agricultural Development Fund was created to ensure that we continue to fund those elements of our agricultural production in such a way that we de-risk, such that private sector money will find it more profitable to invest in agriculture. We have heard about student loan scheme, youth investment fund, nano and consumer credit, MSME support, the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund, the first NYSC graduate support scheme. I just want to take a minute. What this means is that our children who today have not yet found job after NYSC can register and receive support from the federal government until they are able to find employment. I think that is revolutionary. Equally, Mr. President have directed a ward empowerment and social investment scheme that covers the 8,809 wards of Nigeria, meaning each ward can articulate what they can do better. And Mr. President have challenged governors and other subnationals in turn that he wants to see their plans where he can support them in generating more activity in the wards. Equally, we have engaged investors, both domestic and international. And Mr. President have led this drive himself. We have those of us who are privileged to accompany him have seen how the world is recognizing his effort and rewarding him accordingly. Nigeria now have a lot of countries that are willing to work with us to support our macroeconomic reforms and our dreams. So that's why the 4 budgets that we have done in this administration, and I'll take a minute to talk about them, reflect that prioritization, that we are not as rich as we are. We don't have the revenue. We have to be creative. We have to do what other countries have done and ensure that when we mobilize investor confidence by our reforms and financing. But just before talking about the budgets, those of us who work with Mr. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu knows that every day here is a person, here is a president who believes that governance is not a monologue, but dialogue. He has always appreciated that we live in an ever-changing world where even the most well-designed strategy like ours, the Renewed Hope Agenda, needs to be effectively communicated. And occasionally we might learn from the experience of others so that we calibrate and do better in response to a changing world. This requires engaging and listening to others, most especially our younger ones. Mr. President believes in them, believes in listening to them, and is increasingly giving them a place of pride in the Renewed Hope Agenda administration. Mr. President had brought a lot of young persons in government, some of them disruptors, and he encouraged them and he supports them fully. And though some people may think much has not been done, but today, from what has been described from the National Youth Investment Fund, to the graduate for NYSC graduate support scheme, what it means is that a young person needs not to be frustrated. He has one government scheme or the other, the technology training, where he or she, while willing to put in his or her effort, will be rewarded. I think that is an equitable society that we want to ensure that we have created for our young ones. Mr. President believes that Nigeria can double its size and our younger ones should be at the center of that strategy. But we need to remind our younger ones, we are all doing these reforms, we are implementing this strategy in a world where we are not alone. We are competing with other countries. Some do not wish us well. Some have in the past colonized us. Imperialism, slavery, we need not to be repeating. Economic warfare is being put on countries, including ours. Just recently, Nigeria witnessed a technology giant, Binance, participating in economic warfare against our nation. So as our young persons express themselves, we expect them to be cognizant and mindful such that faceless technology protected persons or agendas are not utilized to undermine our country that we want, that we are working hard to ensure that we reposition so that we serve them better. Look, our budget process includes engagement both through the National Assembly and directly with the Budget Office and Ministry of Budget. So where youth groups, civil society organizations, religious groups, those who have been engaging and those who need to engage so that they help interrogate and provide guidance or input such that we can serve them better, we have the mandate to do so, and is consistent with what Mr. President have directed us to do. Just last but not the least is to acknowledge that Mr. President have, in the last 1 year and 2 months, negotiated 4 budgets. We inherited an 819 billion naira supplementary budget, which was already passed before he was sworn in, but yet Mr. President renegotiated it with the National Assembly to provide 500 billion naira for intervention in agriculture, energy transition, MSME, and nano credit support. Equally, we did a 2.17 trillion naira 2023 second supplementary budget that focused on security, more money for security, infrastructure, agriculture, wage award to public servants, and provision for cash transfer to the vulnerable, as well as the 2024 budget, 28.77 trillion, that was, among others, designed to reduce deficit to support broader macroeconomic reforms, increase capital expenditure, as well as increase spending in the priority areas and funding for innovative schemes. Last but not the least, as we speak, a 6.2 trillion naira 2024 Budget Amendment Act is making its way through the National Assembly to provide for counterpart funding and equity contribution for the renewed hope infrastructure projects, as well as new minimum wage and additional funding. The funding for the renewed hope infrastructure counterpart and equity is very, very innovative. This goes to the heart of we don't have the money to fund our infrastructure priorities. Therefore, what do? We are doing what other countries have done to recognize that, A, we don't have that, and create, with National Assembly support, a mechanism where we can provide equity and counterpart so that other investors will invest in those projects. We believe this is the way to go, and we will see more of that. We believe this can only be done with consensus and with ownership by Nigerians, especially our youth. And that is why I took more time to lay out that this is our vision. Occasionally it may be challenged, but in the medium and short term, it will pay off, as indeed it has been paying off. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Budget. Next up, we have the Honorable Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Dele Alake. Please, a round of applause for him.
Thank you. Your Excellencies on the high table, who are also my colleagues in the Federal Executive Council, and all my other colleagues, all protocols observed, because time is fast spent. So we can dispense with a few of the protocols list. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and Nigerians in general, you have been suffused with a lot of statistics, a lot of figures, a lot of facts, and a lot of submissions on the concrete steps that this government have taken in the last 1 year plus. My duty is not to add to the bombardment of figures and statistics. I just want to speak from the heart to Nigerians in general, and to lay out a few facts, maybe forgotten, but few facts that need to be re-injected into the public psyche. Fact number one is this: the rot that this administration met in office when it came into office, the national rot straddled all strata of national life. To controvert that is to deceive oneself. 2, Nigeria since 1960, or perhaps more empirically, since oil was discovered and exploited, Nigeria as a nation, as a society, has shifted attention away from other regenerative, constructive sectors of the economy, like agriculture, like solid minerals, and other sectors, manufacturing, industries and stuff. And all of these have cumulative effect on our national economy. And because of the effect, the economic buoyancy through the free flow of petrodollars over several decades, even our values as a society took a downward trend. We abandoned the age-old values of morality, of discipline, of cultural ethos, and all of this percolated down into even our consumption patterns, economic consumption patterns. All of these things are bound to have an effect down the road. So we are going through the paroxysms of the effect of economic miasma, which had been a result of decades of either mismanagement, wrong priorities, perpetuation of wrong values in the society. There's no way any society will escape the effects of all of these misadventures. However, we all recognize that these things, negativities, have been there for long. And we all recognize the fact that something had to give. We must collectively as a society change the course of our destiny. But until last year, nobody in authority had the guts to take those painful, necessary, bold decisions until this government came into place. And then the issue of subsidy, which was removed, some say with a fiat. If that wasn't removed with a fiat, if we had gone into the usual debates and all that, till now we'll still be embroiled in the debate and no decision will be taken and the nation will be tottering on collapse. It only took a bold leader to take that bold decision when it was necessary. Now we are at the cusp of history. Nigerians must decide whether we need to go on and make progress and let the necessary bold policies, albeit painful in some aspects, whether we should let those policies grow into maturity or we regress as a society. We must take that decision. We can't escape it. You can't make an omelette without breaking the eggs. There's no way you can advance a society economically, socially, politically, even infrastructurally, without re-engineering and restructuring that society and putting it on the path of enduring progress. All the societies that our youths and even elders run to, whether we run there for soccer, social soccer, economic soccer, political sojourn, or even mere enjoyment of the ambience of a developed society. Those societies were not where they are today by fiat or through a magical wand or through societal deleterious effects of economic miasma without lifting a finger. No. Some generations before now in those societies made the necessary sacrifices when those sacrifices were, of course, very germane. It's the result of the sacrifices made by those societies, the previous generations, that you all run to enjoy there, while we refuse to make our own sacrifices at home, so that our today and tomorrow would also be better. But we can only run for a while. We can hide as a nation, as a society. The more we run from the realities staring us in the face, the more we postpone the doomsday. But God forbid, we have been very lucky that at this point in the history of Nigeria, we have somebody who can take the bull by the horns and say, we must end years of the locust, and we must redirect our energies and resources towards instituting enduring legacies. And those are the reasons and the philosophical reasons behind the economic reforms that we are going through. Any government policy anywhere in the world is not a 24-hour event. Any government policy goes through a process of enunciation, conceptualization, execution, formulation, and monitoring before gestation. There is a period of gestation. And within that period of gestation, of course, the effects of the policy will be felt by the society, by the people. We only require one thing: courage, resilience, consistency, to steer ourselves through that gestation period and let these policies now mature. And the results of these policies will begin to manifest to the benefit and betterment of the society. And we have seen it before. And I keep saying, and I've said this at various fora. When our current president became governor in Lagos, we know the whole story now. We knew what we met on ground. The finance minister just left. He was also the finance commissioner at that time. And I was also a member of that executive council. And the governor then, now president, put on his thinking cap, 600 million naira a month IGR for a population of over 20 million then. 600 million naira. The wage bill of the civil service alone was over 1 billion naira. So even without capital expenditure in health, in education, in infrastructure, the IGR was not even enough to service the salaries of the civil service. We had over 48,000 then. And so the governor, now president, said he wasn't elected to be a personnel manager who would be borrowing money from the bank just to pay salaries. And that will be the end of it. And the entire society will just open their arms and do nothing. So he put on his thinking cap. And we started to restructure the economy of Lagos State. The first thing he did was to block leakages, plug the loopholes, and brought in the Oracle system. He became the first governor in the history of this country to bring IT into the payroll system. Subsequently, all states, including the federal government, had copied it. And he brought it. Of course, there was initial resistance, as we are seeing resistance. It's a natural human inclination to resist any change from the status quo. It's natural. There was resistance to the introduction of that technology, but he insisted that that was the way to go. The very first month of the implementation of that technology on the payroll system, 350 million naira was recovered, which meant that 350 million naira had been going into private pockets every month hitherto. And the entire IGR was 600 million. And without introducing a single tax, the IGR started shooting up. And more money was available to spread into other areas, into health, into education, into infrastructure. And we embarked on massive construction work all over the state. Other blockages were introduced to block leakages and plug the loopholes. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, these reforms were also resisted by the society at that subnational level at the time. At some point, we were even being booed on the streets of Lagos. But this governor then maintained that courage, the boldness, the consistency and resilience. And we steered the state through that gestation period, which was painful. And today we know the result. We know what the Lagos IGR is. It's not by fluke. It's by meticulous formulation and execution of the right policies. Today, arguably, Lagos' economy is larger than several African countries put together. It didn't happen by accident. It happened through ingenuity, creativity, thinking out of the box for the betterment of the society. What we need as a nation is to allow these economic reforms and various interventions to mature through the gestation period into reality. And Nigeria will never be the same again. Nigeria will never regress again. Nigeria will be put on a solid economic platform for this and future generations. And history will be kind to this generation for having the resilience other people in later years will now be jackpying to Nigeria. And that is our aim. Thank you very much.
There's a saying that you can't stop the vocabulary of a man who speaks from the heart. Can we please put our hands together for the Honorable Minister?
Yes, thank you very much. Your Excellencies, gentlemen of the press, thank you for your patience. I know you are very, very patriotic Nigerians, and that was why you clap and clap and clap, because the verdict of history is not going to be harsh on you, according to Delhi. And this is because of the Asewaju story, the story of success. Having listened to this, I am convinced that all of us are united to ensure that violence and destruction are not part of the Nigerian chemistry. I want to thank you, all Nigerians, for your patience and your understanding. Problems today were not created today. My statement was so brief. We know that this journey, anchored on renewed hope agenda, is going to take us 4 years. On 4 years, we have done 1 year and 2 months. And we'll be saying farewell to poverty. I will be saying welcome prosperity at the end of the day. All policies are geared towards the policies and programs. The man, our president, is a complete Nigerian, dedicated to the progress of every segment of our society. The approval recently to say crude to a Nigerian of northern extraction in particular vividly tells the story of the president. My advice is don't look back. I told you a story before. I don't know whether some of you were here. To speak as a rural boy who has also benefited from the Nigerian dream. All of us can benefit from Nigeria. That's why you have students' loan scheme and so on. So many opportunities being opened up. Told you the story. What used to happen when we were growing up in the village? If you had a boy, I don't know whether as many of you know it, maybe by the time you were born, you didn't have that, as do I call it, opportunity to develop boys. But it was a very painful experience. But it gets to a point where it became so painful, very painful, you thought you were going to die. It didn't mean you were going to die. It was a period of self-purification. That one was the pause. That one, the pause was for me. Time of self-purification. Your mom would just squeeze it. You scream. The pause is out. And the next stage is was they put a knife in fire, so red. They will put it on top of that, so not really on your body, but just raise it a little bit, drop this palm oil on it, then it will drop in that hole by the pus. You will scream. And that's all. This is what the president has been talking about, pains of new birth, birth of a child. We'll be saying farewell to poverty. Please, let us not destroy our country because of faceless groups. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, very distinguished. I believe we've all heard what has been said so far. At this time, we'll take questions from the media. We'll take questions from the media. By the show of hands, I've just been said, we'll just, for the sake of time, we'll take 2 questions from the media, and then we can close this. So, number 1 and number 2. Number 1 and number 2. If time permits, we'll add that, if time permits. Thank you. Please, can we pass the microphone quickly? Number 1, kindly raise your hand. Number 2, raise your hand so they can see you. 2 questions, please. Thank you. Please stand up, your name and your media organization. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Minister, sir, my name is Friday Okeregbe. I'm a reporter with Channels TV. Yeah, it's obvious that the federal government seems to have a lot of policies that will have long-term benefits. But in the interim, I would like you to respond to what is the government doing to address the issue of the high exchange rate that we have, and also the high pump price of petrol. Because apart from the issue of insecurity, these 2 issues I just mentioned, the high pump price rate of petrol and also the high rate of exchange, the exchange rate. These are some of the reasons why we have the rising cost of foodstuff. And the Honorable Minister, sir, I'm happy that you talked again about the rice intervention of the federal government. The 50% that the federal government, you said, is paying for the 50 kg bag of rice. I'd like to seek clarification from you. Is this something that is in the planning stage, or is something that is already out there? If it is something that is already out there, I'd like to hear from you. You list some of those centers that will have, perhaps the one in Abuja. Because if we have the address of some of those centers, it will enable us as journalists to do fact check. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
Honorable Mr. Sir, my name is Amadin Uyi with News Central Television. I would have loved the Minister of Finance to answer the question, but the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning is still on seat, and I think he can answer it. About 3 years ago, a $3.5 billion loan was collected to revamp our refineries. The nation was given 44 months that those refineries will come back on stream. That expired December last year. We have not heard anything concrete about working and producing refineries. In May this year, another $500 million loan was collected to support the Transmission Company of Nigeria to make prepaid electricity meters available to citizens, and also investment in the power sector. It's almost how many months Nigerians have not seen anything, any impact or improvement on that. Just yesterday, there were reports that was awash in the media talking about another $500 million loan to support repair of dams and the rest. Now, we understand that Nigeria has been going through a forex crisis, and the federal government has tried within its capacity to bring stability. What citizens want to know is that these loans, will it not affect the current economic situation, considering the fact that we are collecting these loans, and it is Nigerians, our children, that will repay it back. Peter, I just wanted your take on it, on if these loans will not affect the current strategy of the federal government to rebound the economy and to ensure that Nigerians don't suffer in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, you may wish to respond.
To the first question, sorry, I didn't get the name, was on exchange rate and petroleum prices. Exchange rate by mandate is the responsibility of Central Bank of Nigeria, so I will be careful that I don't breach protocol in doing. But the question even illustrates part of our challenge. In June 2023, and let us correct that, the Petroleum Industry Act was passed into law before President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu came to office. The Petroleum Industry Act made the Nigerian National Petroleum Company a limited liability company, meaning that its operations were supposed to be market-based. The 2023 budget President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherited did not have provision for subsidy. So his bold statement on the day he's sworn in was in tandem with the law as it was. And after that, petroleum prices hovered about 600 naira, which at the then exchange rate of 600 naira to a dollar was about $1 per liter. Today, the exchange rate is 1,500, and petroleum is still being sold for that price. And petroleum is imported in this country, paid for and imported in this country in foreign exchange. Therefore, even there, it illustrates the challenge that NNPC is currently facing, because it's now recovering only 30 to 35 cents for what costs $1. That's why it is important to appreciate the bold and courageous decision by President to direct NNPC that the 445,000 barrels a day that is designated for domestic refineries should be sold to domestic refiners in Naira. because that will solve, it makes sense, it will solve a problem, but more importantly, it shows pragmatic thinking, which will, we believe, enhance economic activity and even help with petroleum prices, though marginally, and even support exchange rate. Our exchange rate is a reflection of the earlier point both myself and the Minister of Solid Minerals says. We inherited an economy that has not confronted its reality. We are not as rich as we are, but we have lived like princes and princesses. For comparison, we have a 28 trillion naira budget, which is about $22 billion. Brazil, a country of about the same populace with us, have a federal budget of about $700 billion. Will we ever be like Brazil with that disparity in spending? I think the answer is no. And I said it earlier that even yesterday, Bismarck Rewani at a function provided a 60-year data, and that where is the golden moment? Yes, maybe there has been some incidences of slight growth for temporarily 2 years, 3 years. But when you average it over the 50-year period, our economic performance has not been as great as we want to be, as great as commensurate with our population. That is what I meant with Mr. President, the summary of his vision that let us confront our reality. It's a tough choice. The simile is, or the metaphor is, if a head of a family decide to have a frank discussion with the family that, you know what, we are not as rich as we are. Maybe it will not be a pleasant discussion, but it will build a better family in the future. The 3.5 billion was collected not to reform refineries. Yes, there was a 3.5 billion naira borrowing through Afro-Exim Bank to support the budget and provide some money for refineries, as well as 500 billion naira loan for dams, and that is about 4.5 billion US dollar loan. Is this a problem? In my humble view, no. This is an element of confronting our reality. Today, as Minister of Budget, anytime a public official enters into my office or interacted with me, he will tell me that he doesn't have enough funding for the sector of the national life. Every time National Assembly members came to visit me, they have expectations that are not being met in their constituents. Is this so with other countries? No. Those other countries decided realistically to say, how much money do we need to fund our priorities? Or not to, but at least let us be clear about them. That is not 28, that is not $20 billion. And because of that, even that 28 trillion naira budget anticipate that we are going to borrow about 8 trillion of it, with foreign borrowing almost about 5 trillion, which is about 5 billion or 4.5 billion US dollars. So these borrowings are consistent with the borrowing plan. It's not borrowing or foreign money is the issue. Sometimes it's too little borrowing compared to what you need to do to fix the economy. That is what we need to confront, in my modest view. Thank you.
There's one that... Oh, okay. Yes, the The rice is actually available. There is in the process of distribution to the various states. Sometimes why it is difficult to mention the routes and the time for some security reasons. But the rice is available. It's going to be sold at 40,000 naira. The rice is already available. I can confirm that to you. It's going to be sold at various points around the country, and we'll give you, once they are there and it will start, we'll give you point by point where it is being sold and what are the guidelines, so that care is being taken so that it will not be hijacked by people who have money. They will just go there. If you put it out there, they will just go there and mop it up. Those for whom this rice is intended will not now get the rice. But rice is available for sale at 40,000 naira. Unfortunately, because of time and the need, the airtime, we are on live TV. The time is already spent. We want to really thank you, seize this opportunity to thank you, members of Nigerian media, for your patience, for your sense of patriotism. Each time we call upon you, you are always here to answer this question. But what I can say, as I always do, is that while government strives to put out information for you in an honest, timely, and credible manner, it is incumbent on you, my colleagues, to also ensure responsibility and diligence in the way you report things. We have only one Nigeria to keep. Thank you very much for your attention. God bless you.
And with that being said, we've come to the end of this press conference. Can we please rise as we take the national anthem? Thank you very much. Thank you. É para